Imagine for a second that you have just been dropped right into the center of a massive, bustling, completely unfamiliar city.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Lots of noise,
Yeah.
overlapping alleys, crazy traffic.
Exactly. It's totally chaotic.
Yeah?
And you're trying to figure out how to get around. So someone walks up and hands you a piece of paper, you unfold it, and you're expecting, a nice color-coded map.
Right, with street names and little landmarks?
Yeah, but instead, you get a spreadsheet.
Oh, wow. The spreadsheet.
A literal spreadsheet. It's just an endless, dry list of raw latitude and longitude coordinates. No street names at all, no landmarks, just a terrifying wall of numbers.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It is, and you're supposed to navigate this vibrant, living place by keeping your head down and doing, constant, complex mental math.
I mean, trying to experience a city that way would completely drain you within, the first 10 minutes?
Oh, absolutely.
You would be so intensely focused on calculating those exact coordinates.
Terrified of making a mistake.
Right. Terrified of making a mathematical error and taking a wrong turn that you wouldn't even be able to look up. You'd completely miss the smell of the food stalls, the architecture, just the entire rhythm of the life happening all around you.
You wouldn't be experiencing the city at all.
No, you'd basically be a robot executing a program.
And the crazy thing is, that exhausting, head-down, mathematical approach, that is precisely how the vast majority of us try to navigate learning a new language.
Oh, without a doubt. Especially English.
Especially English. I mean, you walk into a classroom or you open an app and you get handed these massive textbooks, and what's inside? Rigid grammar rules, brutal exceptions to those rules, and these really complex structural formulas.
Basically, they're handing you the spreadsheet.
They hand you the spreadsheet and tell you to memorize it. But today, on this deep dive, we are taking that spreadsheet and we are throwing it straight in the trash.
I love that. Let's get rid of it.
We are diving into some truly fascinating insights from the folks over at a YouTube channel called Go English. And they are doing some incredible work breaking down the underlying psychology of language.
Yeah, their approach is really refreshing.
It is, because their mission here is brilliantly subversive. They are taking two of the smallest, most notoriously frustrating words in the entire English language, the words to and for.
Oh, the bane of every language learner's existence.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And they are completely stripping away the traditional rules.
Which is such a profound paradigm shift, especially for you, the listener, who might be deep in the trenches of learning right now and just entirely burnt out on information overload.
Yeah, if you're feeling that burnout, this deep dive is for you.
Because the core thesis we are unpacking today from this source material is that trying to memorize long, convoluted grammatical explanations is actually a trap.
A total trap.
It really is. Trying to translate sentences word for word in your head while you were in the middle of a real-time conversation, it's a cognitive dead end. You just freeze up.
Right, the mental math is too slow.
Exactly. So the real key to mastery, the secret that native speakers use without even realizing it, is tuning into the feeling behind these words.
Yeah.
Language isn't a math equation waiting to be solved. It is a living, breathing reflection of human perception.
A reflection of human perception. I really want to linger on that for a second, because it means we have to stop thinking like human calculators, right? We have to start analyzing how we actually physically move through the world.
Yeah, we have to look at our actual emotional intent.
Exactly. So our mission today on this deep dive is to map out these two tiny prepositions, not as grammar particles, but as invisible psychological guides.
I like that framing.
We're going to explore how they map our intentions, our physical movements, and even our empathy. So let's just jump right in. Let's start by looking at the pure physical physics of the very first word, the word to.
Right. And looking closely at to requires us to really ground ourselves in the physical world. It is fundamentally about direction.
Direction. Okay.
Yeah, it's about destination.
Yeah.
It is the language of physical movement. We can quite literally visualize this concept.
Like drawing a picture in your head.
Exactly. You start in one place, your physical body moves through three-dimensional space, and then you arrive at another distinct place. The examples provided in the material are universally relatable to anyone's daily routine, like, I'm going to work.
Right.
You are currently sitting in your kitchen, you engage in the physical act of movement, and eventually your body occupies the space at your workplace.
Okay, let's unpack this, because on the surface, moving from point A to point B sounds incredibly basic, like it's elementary school physics, right?
Sure.
But the source material pushes us to visualize this movement very specifically. We are talking about leaving home and going to the gym. Or going to the supermarket. Think
Mhm.
about the sentence, she walked to the bus stop. If you close your eyes, you can literally see the person. You see the kinetic
You
energy.
see them putting one foot in front of the other.
Exactly, covering ground until they reach that specific concrete slab where the bus pulls up. But a question instantly popped into my head when I was reviewing this.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, I have to wonder if the scale of that movement changes the feeling in our brains.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Right, because walking down the block to a bus stop feels like a small, intimate action. But we also use this exact same word for massive distances.
Like we're flying to Sydney.
Yes. Or we're traveling to Japan. My gut tells me that a 14-hour international flight crossing multiple time zones should feel structurally different than a 30-second walk down the street.
That makes total logical sense.
Right. Does the sheer size of the distance alter how that word functions cognitively?
Well, you would think so, given the massive difference in effort and time. But what's fascinating here is that cognitively, English treats those two scenarios exactly the same.
Really? No difference at all.
None. The scale absolutely does not matter. And that reveals something profound about how English frames reality. Whether the distance is 10 feet to a bus stop or, 10,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean to Japan, the linguistic framing remains completely identical.
Wow. That's actually really liberating.
It is a brilliant, simple visualization to hold on to here, which the source touches on, is an arrow.
An arrow. Okay.
Yeah, if you can draw an invisible arrow in your head, connecting your current starting point to your intended ending point, the word to is almost always the correct choice.
That is so visual. I love that.
English is a highly action-oriented language. The word to takes all the abstract noise of a sentence and completely grounds it in concrete bodily movement.
So the arrow doesn't care if it takes 30 seconds to land or a 16-hour flight to land.
Exactly. The trajectory is the only thing that matters.
The trajectory, that is a fantastic way to frame it. It's the sheer feeling of being in flight. You are in motion from here, heading there. And there's a specific phrase used by the Go English host that I think every learner listening to this should write down. They say, no grammar stress, just movement.
That's the golden rule right there.
If we can internalize that one single image, that arrow in flight, we eliminate so much of the anxiety that comes with choosing the right preposition. But of course, physical travel is really only the tip of the iceberg, right?
Oh, yeah. We're far more complex than just walking to bus stops.
Right. We don't just move our bodies. So what happens when that arrow isn't pointing to a geographical location on a map? What happens when it points to a person?
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Stepping away from geographical maps brings us into an incredibly nuanced space. We have to introduce the concept of the receiver.
The receiver.
Yeah, the destination of the arrow of to isn't always a physical place. Very often, the destination is a human being who is receiving something.
Okay, that makes sense, like handing someone something.
Exactly. The physical examples of this still quite easy to grasp. Think about a basic sentence like, I gave the keys to my brother.
Right.
We can all visualize that interaction perfectly. The keys are a heavy, physical, jagged object. They move from your hand, they travel through the air, and they land squarely in your brother's hand.
So the arrow is still entirely intact.
Completely intact. It's functioning exactly as it did with the bus stop or Japan. It's just landing in a human palm instead of a parking lot.
A human palm instead of a parking lot. Okay, the keys physically change hands. That makes perfect sense. But then we encounter a concept in the source material that I found deeply intriguing.
Which part?
The idea that English loves movement, even when that movement is completely invisible.
Oh, yes. The invisible courier.
Right. Take the sentence, she sent an email to her boss. An email is not a physical object. You can't hold it in your hand.
No, it has no mass at all.
Exactly. It's just code, light, and data. But our brains still process it as a physical package moving through space.
We absolutely do.
It moves from her laptop keyboard, travels invisibly through the router, up to a satellite, and eventually lands in the boss's inbox. We are still drawing that exact same arrow. We are just drawing it through the digital ether.
And pushing this concept of the invisible arrow even further brings us to the realm of pure thought.
Pure thought. Okay, give me an example.
Consider the phrase, can you explain this to me?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right, this is a purely cognitive exchange. There is no physical object like a key. There is no digital data like an email. There is only an idea, a piece of information, or a specific meaning locked inside one person's head.
But we still used to.
We still use to. The word demands that this invisible abstract concept be packaged up and shipped across the room to the other person.
Okay, wait, I want to play devil's advocate for a moment here,
Go for it.
because this is where the visualization starts to feel a little bit slippery for me. If I am explaining a complex topic to someone, nothing is literally leaving my body. I am not losing the information by giving it to them. My brain still holds the idea perfectly intact. So, the arrow analogy, if we think of it as a physical object leaving my possession, it almost feels like it breaks down a little bit.
I hear what you're saying, but look at how the brain actually processes communication. We don't process speaking as a cloning of information where I keep a copy and magically generate a copy in your head.
We don't.
No, we process it as a delivery. Words move, ideas move,
Yeah.
advice moves, messages move. Everything can be propelled toward a person.
Propelled. That's a strong word.
It is. It's not about losing possession of the idea. It's about the active transfer of consciousness. You are taking your understanding, putting it on that arrow, and shooting it into their field of awareness.
Ah, I see. So it's less like handing over my car keys and more like a game of cat.
A game of catch, yes, exactly.
The idea or the explanation is the baseball. I am standing here holding it, understanding its weight and its shape, but for you to understand it, I can't just hold it.
You have to throw it.
Right. I have to wind up and throw that invisible ball of meaning across the empty space between us. It moves to you. You catch it. And now you have the meaning. The ball didn't disappear from reality. It just traveled the distance.
Expanding on that baseball analogy, think about the psychological mechanism at play. The word to fundamentally requires a receiver to catch that ball.
You need someone with a glove.
Exactly. The entire concept boils down to one simple question you can ask yourself in the middle of a conversation.
Which is?
Is something moving to a person? If someone's standing there with their metaphorical glove open, ready to be on the receiving end of an action, a physical object, an email, or invisible idea, to is your tool.
It is the ultimate indicator of an arrow in flight finding its target.
Spot on.
Okay, so we have established a robust, reliable, highly visual rule. To is the arrow, its movement. It's a trajectory landing at a destination or landing in the hands of a receiver.
It's a very solid foundation.
It feels solid. It feels like a rule we can trust. But then, as anyone who has ever tried to learn this language knows, you turn the corner and English throws a massive, frustrating contradiction right in your path.
Oh, yes. The dreaded exception.
We run into a glaring exception where this beautiful, logical arrow just completely vanishes into thin air.
The verb bridge.
The verb bridge.
This is a common structural quirk that shows up constantly in daily conversation, and it violently breaks all the physical rules we just established.
It really does.
When to comes immediately before a verb, words like want, decide, need, try, know, it suddenly loses all of its spatial meaning. It loses its directional meaning entirely. It becomes part of the verb pattern itself.
Think about sentences like, I want to learn English, or we decided to stay home. When I say I want to learn, I am not physically moving anywhere. My body is totally stationary. There is no geographical destination like Japan or the supermarket.
And there's no receiver either.
Exactly. There is no person standing there receiving an email or an idea. Nothing is moving from point A to point B. The arrow is completely gone.
It's just gone.
And the hosts of Go English explicitly warn learners that this specific structural anomaly is where people stop and think too much. This is the ultimate danger zone for overanalysis. You freeze up because the rule broke.
It's a danger zone because it directly violates the physical intuition we just spent so much time building. The learner's brain is desperately looking for the arrow.
Scanning the horizon for it.
Yeah, it's scanning for the destination. And when it can't find one, linguistic panic sets in. You start thinking, wait, where's it going?
Right.
The best advice the source material gives here is to completely decouple the word from the concept of direction or destination in these specific cases.
But how are you, the listener, supposed to reconcile that? I mean, we just spent 10 minutes building up the physics of the arrow, and now we're told to completely ignore it.
It sounds contradictory, I know.
It feels incredibly frustrating, almost unfair. But maybe there's another way to visualize it so it doesn't feel like a betrayal of the rule.
How so?
Well, if two isn't an arrow here, maybe it's more like mortar between bricks.
Mortar between bricks. I like where this is going.
Yeah. It doesn't have any architectural meaning or standalone purpose. You don't look at a beautifully constructed brick wall and admire the mortar.
No, you admire the wall.
Right. The mortar is just the structural glue. It holds the action, the brick of wanting, and the brick of learning together in a stable sentence. It's just the stuff squished in the middle to keep the building from collapsing.
That is a brilliant analogy. Let's take your mortar analogy a step further.
Hmm.
If you're a language learner, you're likely spending an enormous amount of mental energy stressing about the mortar when you should be focusing entirely on the bricks.
Yes, staring at the gray paste instead of the beautiful red bricks.
Exactly. Native speakers are completely blind to the mortar. To them, it is purely structural scaffolding. The practical advice from Go English here is to simply copy the pattern and let it become automatic.
Don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it at all. You don't stand there on the sidewalk analyzing the chemical composition of the mortar between the bricks.
Yeah.
You just trust that it holds the wall up.
Mm.
When you hear native speakers say, "I need to call her," or "he tried to explain," you just have to accept that the two is part of the machinery of the verb. You let the rhythm of the language take over. The more you expose yourself to these patterns, the more automatic that scaffolding becomes in your own mind.
It's really an exercise in letting go, isn't it?
Very much so.
Letting go of the desperate need for every single word to have a profound, visualizable meaning. Sometimes a word is just a piece of grammatical hardware holding the pipes together.
Just plumbing.
Just plumbing. So we've mapped out the physics of two as our trusty arrow, and we've acknowledged its completely different role as structural mortar. But now we have to completely shift our brains.
A total pivot.
We have to step out of this physical, structural, kinetic world and enter an entirely different psychological framework to understand the other half of our deep dive, the word for.
Stepping into the world of for requires us to ask a fundamental question. If to is entirely about the external world, about physical movement, geographical direction, and the structural connection of verbs, then what is for actually mapping?
It's definitely not physical.
No. We have to make a beautiful pivot here. When you hear the word for, the immediate instinctual question that should pop into your mind is why?
Why? Just that one word.
Just that one word. We are no longer in the external world. We are in the internal world. It is about motivation. It explores the hidden reason behind something's existence or the invisible catalysts that cause an action to occur.
Exploring that why brings us to an incredibly vivid example from the material that just completely clicked for me.
Which one was that?
Imagine you are walking down a hallway in a hospital or a factory, and you see a bright red button on a wall encased in glass. The sign above it says, "This button is for emergencies."
Oh yes, the emergency button.
Now, when you look at that button, you don't imagine the button growing legs and walking down the hallway.
No, that would be terrifying.
Right. You don't imagine it being thrown through the air to a receiver. There's absolute zero movement.
Right.
But the word for, quietly and instantly, announces the entire profound destiny of that plastic object. It exists solely because the concept of emergencies exists. Its entire identity is wrapped up in that potential future event.
It reveals the invisible intent behind the physical object.
Mm.
The word for isn't mapping space. It is mapping pure purpose.
Pure purpose.
And we can expand this beyond just stationary objects to dynamic human actions, too. Consider the sentence, "I'm studying English for my job."
Okay, another classic example.
Again, no physical movement is being highlighted here. The physical act of studying might just be sitting completely still at a desk reading a book.
Right, no arrows flying around.
Exactly. The word for is acting as a psychological spotlight. It reaches into the dark and illuminates the invisible motivator, the job, the career advancement, the paycheck that is driving the intense, grueling action of studying.
I love how this applies to our basic biological needs, too. Take the example. We stopped for lunch.
Oh, that's a great one.
Think about the physical mechanics of that sentence. The physical action is literally stopping, ceasing all movement. The arrow of to has hit a brick wall.
The arrow is dead on the ground.
Yes. But the word for steps in to explain the internal biological and psychological drive that caused the physical body to halt its progress. The hunger, the craving for food, the need for a break that is the invisible engine.
The invisible engine, I like that.
And for is the word that connects that internal engine to the external action of hitting the brakes. It feels incredibly natural to use this word because it instantly satisfies human curiosity.
We are inherent meaning-making machines, after all.
We are. We look at the world and we constantly want to know why something is happening. For hands us that existential answer on a silver platter.
It grounds our actions in profound context. But this sense of purpose, this answering of the why, isn't always restricted to abstract, pragmatic reasons like jobs or biological imperatives like lunch.
No. What else is there?
Very often, the why driving our actions, is deeply personal. It is highly relational. And this leads us to what might be the most beautiful, nuanced aspect of the word for, its deep, inextricable connection to human empathy.
The empathy of for. This is where the mechanics of grammar take a remarkably emotional turn.
It really is an emotional word.
Think about the simple act of giving a gift to someone you care about and saying, "This is for you." Try to really feel the texture of that word. It carries a specific emotional weight.
It does. It implies kindness.
It implies kindness. It implies care. It implies that someone was sitting alone, thinking about someone else's happiness. When you use for in this context, you aren't talking about the cardboard box physically moving through the air.
You're not focusing on the arrow.
No, you are talking entirely about the person who benefits from what's inside the box. The gift exists in reality because of that person. It was manifested into the physical world purely to make them smile.
Spotting this psychological pattern encoded right into the bedrock of English grammar is fascinating. When a sentence is fundamentally trying to answer the question, who is this helping? Or who is receiving a positive result from this effort? The word for is the natural, inevitable fit.
So it's always about a positive outcome.
Usually, yes. Think
Yeah.
about the phrase, exercise is good for your health. Your health is the direct beneficiary. It receives the positive compounding effect of the sweat and the effort.
Right.
Or, I booked a table for my friends. The friends are the entire singular reason the stressful action of calling a restaurant and booking a table took place. They're the absolute center of the intention.
I really want you, the listener, to actively visualize the difference in feeling here, because it's stark. We established earlier that to is this sterile, direct, geometric arrow pointing at a target.
Very mechanical.
It's functional. It gets the job done. But for, when used to show benefit, is completely different. It's not an arrow. It's like a warm blanket being wrapped around the beneficiary.
A warm blanket that is a perfect visualization.
It implies a protective, positive, nurturing intent. The grammar itself forces the speaker to decenter themselves and center the well-being of the other person.
The sterile arrow versus the warm blanket. That perfectly captures the cognitive shift you need to make. And this focus on feeling over rigid rules is exactly what makes the language come alive.
You don't have to be a robot navigating coordinates.
Exactly. You don't need to parse the grammar tree in your head. You just need to feel the intent of care.
Yeah.
But just as we saw with the word to, having its structural mortar exception, we have to look at a third, highly specific scenario where for steps away from this emotional warmth.
Oh, so for has an exception too.
It does. It sheds the blanket and takes on a completely different, almost architectural role. It becomes the master of chronology.
Ah, yes. Time, the invisible dimension. Time is a subject where learners constantly pause, stutter, and second-guess themselves.
It's a huge stumbling block.
They get tangled up in sentences like, "I've lived here for 5 years," or "We waited for a long time." The breakdown of why we use for here in the source material is just stellar. It exposes a fundamental truth about human perception.
Which is that time is not a destination.
Exactly. You cannot walk toward it. You do not, under any circumstances, wait to 5 years.
That impossible phrase, wait to 5 years, brilliantly exposes the logical flaw in using the wrong preposition. 5 years is not a spot on a map. You can't draw an arrow to it.
No, it's not Tokyo or a bus stop.
Right. It is a duration. It is an extended period of existence. You have to feel the length of it. You can almost feel the individual minutes, the days, and the years slowly ticking by. There's absolutely no movement happening in these sentences. You are simply describing how long a static situation continues to exist in reality.
Feeling the length of time. That is such a poetic, tangible way to describe an abstract grammar rule. It made me think of a new analogy for you.
Oh, let's hear it.
If time isn't a point on a map that you are walking toward with an arrow, what is it? I think time, in this context, is a container.
A container.
Imagine you are sitting completely still. The word for acts as the physical walls of that container. It defines the boundaries of your experience. You are sitting inside a container that is exactly 5 years wide.
Oh, I see.
Or you are sitting in a waiting room inside a container labeled a long time. The word for builds the walls around the duration so we can comprehend its size.
The container analogy works beautifully to give shape to something shapeless. And if we look at everything we've discovered about for up to this point, we can start to see a unifying philosophical thread.
A grand unified theory of for.
Basically, yes. Whether it's acting as a reason like the red emergency button on the wall, or a benefit like a carefully wrapped gift for a friend, or a duration like the walls of your time container, for is always acting as a grounding mechanism.
It anchors the action.
It takes a physical action and tethers it to its invisible psychological weight, the weight of a purpose, the heavy warmth of human care, or the inescapable weight of time passing. It grounds the physical world in the invisible realities that actually govern our lives.
It's unsettling how much heavy lifting that one tiny word is doing without us noticing.
It really is.
We just blindly use it every day, completely unaware of the massive existential concepts it's mapping. So we have successfully isolated these two words perfectly. We have our kinetic arrows and our structural mortar for two.
Yep.
And we have our existential reasons, our warm blankets of empathy, and our time containers for four. In a sterile laboratory setting, they are perfectly distinct, but as we all know, real life is not a laboratory.
No, real life is messy.
Conversations move fast, the environment is messy, and this brings us to what we can call the crossroads.
It's a crossroads.
This is the terrifying moment where the exact same physical scenario can use either word, and the choice depends entirely on the hidden internal intent of the speaker.
This is truly the crux of the entire deep dive. This is the moment where the training wheels come off, and you actually have to pilot the language. Looking at side-by-side comparisons proves that English isn't just a machine listening to vocabulary. It is actively listening to the meaning behind the vocabulary.
Meaning over mechanics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The physical reality of the situations we are about to describe hasn't changed a single inch, but the linguistic reality shifts completely based on a three-letter word.
Let's look at a prime example from Go English. Sentence 1. I gave the book to Anna. Sentence 2. I bought the book for Anne.
Okay, classic example.
Now think about this. The physical reality is identical. We have the exact same hardcover book, and we have the exact same human being named Anna. But the feeling generated by those sentences is radically different.
It's completely different vibes.
Right. I gave the book to Anna is purely about the movement. It's the arrow. You had it in your hands, you extended your arms, and now she has it in her hands. The book physically changes possession. But I bought the book for Anna. The book might still be sitting in your shopping bag in the trunk of your car. The arrow hasn't flown yet. But the reason that book is in your bag, the benefit of you swiping your credit card, is Anna.
One focuses on the mechanics of the transfer. The other focuses on the emotional purpose of the acquisition. It is a subtle but massive psychological shift.
It is.
We see this again when comparing purpose versus action. This app is for learning English versus I need to learn English.
Oh, that's a tricky one.
In the first sentence, for announces the existential purpose of the software. It explains why a team of developers spent thousands of hours coding it in the first place.
Right, the reason it exists.
But in the second sentence, to is just that structural mortar we talked about earlier, blindly connecting your internal need with the action of learning. It's the exact same concept, learning English, but it is handled with completely different cognitive tools depending on what you want to emphasize.
But the comparison that I think is the ultimate aha moment for the learner, the one that perfectly crystallizes everything we've discussed today, is the gym example.
Let's hear the gym example.
Listen to these two sentences. I'm going to the gym versus I go to the gym for my health.
Okay.
I want you to imagine you are the director of a movie, you have a camera, and you have complete dictatorial control over what the audience sees and feels. If your script says, I'm going to the gym, you are directing the camera to pan out wide.
Wide shot, got it.
You are showing the character leaving their house, walking down the street, waiting at a crosswalk, and finally arriving at a brick building. It's an establishing shot. It's all about the geography, the journey. But if your script says, I go to the gym for my health, the camera doesn't care about the street or the building. The camera zooms right in on the character's face.
A tight close-up.
Exactly. It focuses on the sweat on their brow, the determination in their eyes, the beating of their heart. It focuses on their internal motivation to live a longer life. The physical action is identical. They are lifting weights in a room, but you as the speaker are choosing what part of reality you want to highlight.
Let's take your director analogy a step further. If the camera zooms in on the face for my health, what is the lighting like?
Oh, interesting.
It's warmer. It's
Yeah.
personal. It completely changes the genre of the sentence. You aren't just reporting logistical facts to a listener. You are actively choosing the reality you want to communicate.
You're setting the mood.
You are telling the listener what matters most to you in that exact moment. The mundane logistics of your daily movement or the deep philosophy behind your actions. English isn't asking you to blindly memorize a rule book. It is asking you to slow down, look inward, and decide what you actually want to say. The right word will appear naturally once you clarify your own intention.
It's so empowering to realize you have that much control. But let's be entirely real for a second. With psychological shifts this incredibly subtle, with the camera angles changing so violently in the middle of a fast-paced conversation at a noisy dinner party, it is absolutely no wonder that people make mistakes.
It's a miracle we can speak at all, honestly.
Seriously. And what is so vital to understand is that we shouldn't just arbitrarily correct mistakes. We need to analyze the psychology behind why those specific mistakes happen in the first place. We need to deconstruct the errors.
Deconstructing the errors is where we find the most empathy for the language learner. The primary example the source material examines is what we might call the explain paradox.
An explain paradox. I love that name.
Learners constantly, almost universally say, I explained it for him, instead of the grammatically correct phrase, I explained it to him.
Oh, I've heard that a million times.
And it's crucial to understand why this happens. It's not a failure of intelligence. It's not because they haven't studied enough. It's actually the result of a fascinating, beautiful cognitive conflict happening in real time.
The irony of this mistake is just brilliant. Think about being in that scenario. You are sitting with a colleague. He is deeply confused about a project. You see the stress on his face. You feel bad for him.
Right, your empathy kicks in.
Your internal motivation, your entire driving force in that moment is to help him. You want him to benefit from your knowledge so he can relax. So your brain, moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, instantly grabs the warm blanket word. It grabs for, because you are overwhelmed by the feeling of care and benefit.
You're trying to wrap him in that blanket.
Yes. But the mechanical structure of the verb explain doesn't care about your feelings. It requires the transfer of information. It demands the arrow of to, so the invisible ball of meaning can be caught. Your empathy is basically getting into a fist fight with the structural payload of the verb. And because you are a good human being, the empathy wins out in the moment of speaking. You say, for him, because you are trying to give him a gift.
It is a profound, beautiful flaw in human cognition. Our brains inherently prioritize emotional intent over grammatical structure. We want to desperately signal that we are helping, so we reflexively reach for the word of help.
It's almost poetic that we make that mistake.
It really is. And there is another incredible common mistake that follows this exact same psychological pattern. Handing someone a physical gift and saying, this is to you, instead of the correct phrase, this is for you.
Right. In that scenario, it's the exact inverse of the explain paradox.
Precisely. Here, the brain is hyper-focused on the physical act of the cardboard box moving through the air. The brain sees the arrow, it sees the physical transfer of possession.
The mechanics of the handover.
Exactly. And because it is so focused on the mechanics of the movement, it completely forgets to highlight the warm, nurturing intent behind the gift. It defaults to the sterile arrow instead of the warm blanket.
It's like the brain gets stuck on one camera angle and forgets to switch lenses. But the reassurance that the English hosts have to offer here is so comforting.
It's the most important part of their message.
These mistakes are completely normal. They happen to advanced learners who have lived in English-speaking countries for decades. They even happen to native speakers when they are speaking quickly, they are tired, and their thoughts are tangled.
That reassurance is absolutely vital for anyone trying to master a language. Mistakes like saying, explain for you, simply show that you are trying. They show that your brain is actively wrestling with these complex spatial and emotional maps. You are engaged in the heavy lifting of communication.
You're doing the hard work.
Every single time you pause to notice the feeling behind a sentence, every time you catch yourself using the wrong camera angle, you are recalibrating that internal map. You are getting a little bit better. The philosophy to hold on to is that English grows slowly. It is an organic, messy process of attuning yourself to these subtle emotional frequencies. It is not a multiple-choice test you can cram for overnight.
English grows slowly. I think every language learner needs that embroidered on a pillow. So, to solidify all of this theory, to take all of these maps and arrows, structural mortars, warm blankets, and time containers and make them practical, we need to bring it all together.
Let's do it.
Let's look at a master story. A short, natural dialogue from the source that weaves all of these conflicting concepts together seamlessly in a matter of seconds. I want to break this down because it proves that you don't need to be consciously juggling a massive spreadsheet of rules. You just need to keep those two core questions in mind. Where is it going? Versus, why am I doing this?
Let's walk through a narrative that is a perfect microcosm of daily life. Imagine a woman preparing for her day. It starts with preparing a gift for a friend.
Okay, stop right there. Right away, in the very first action, we have the existential purpose. We have the benefit, the warm intent is established, the gift exists because of her care for her friend.
Exactly. Then, later that day, she is giving the gift to her in person.
Boom! Suddenly, the grammar shifts to map the physical arrow. The item is moving through space to a receiver.
Later that evening, she is sending a text message to remind her about dinner.
And we are back to the invisible courier, transferring an abstract idea through the digital ether to a receiver.
And the narrative continues to shift. She reflects that she is doing all of this hard work for the future.
Now we're dealing with massive invisible weight, the broad existential reason driving the entirety of her actions.
Then the alarm goes off the next morning, and it's back to the daily grind, going to work.
The camera pans out. It's a sheer geographical destination, the daily, unavoidable arrow of movement.
And finally, after work, going to the gym for health.
The beautiful, complex combination of the physical movement through the city paired immediately with the internal biological motivation.
When you slow down and break a normal day down like that, you realize how effortlessly, how seamlessly these complex cognitive shifts flow in natural conversation. The speaker is constantly, subconsciously toggling back and forth between mapping their physical environment and mapping their internal emotional landscape.
It's like a dance.
It is a dance, and it proves the ultimate point. If you can just keep those two distinct feelings in mind, is this about direction and receiving, or is this about purpose and benefit? The language will eventually flow naturally. You don't need to do the mental math of translating in your head. You just need to feel the intent.
So here's my challenge to you, the listener. If you are sitting in a meeting right now, or driving your car, or doing the dishes, don't just listen to us analyze this. Take this framework and actively apply it to your immediate reality.
Yes, apply it right now.
Look around the room you are in right now. Try constructing a sentence about your own life in this exact moment, using these psychological principles. Are you listening to this deep dive for your education? Are you drinking coffee for energy before walking to your car? Be the active director of your own scene. Choose your camera angles deliberately.
That active, conscious application is crucial. It doesn't take hours of grueling study at a desk. 5 minutes of mindful practice a day. 5 minutes of looking at a coffee cup and consciously focusing on the feelings of 2 and 4, rather than burying your head in a grammar textbook, will completely rewire the way your brain processes English.
5 minutes a day, that's totally doable.
It shifts you from being a passive rule follower to an active meaning maker.
An active meaning maker. That is exactly what we are striving for. So let's quickly wrap up this incredible, sprawling journey we've been on. We took a seemingly simple topic from Go English and extracted an entire philosophy of human communication.
It's been quite the ride.
We learned that 2 is our trusty kinetic arrow. It is for geographical direction, it's for identifying a human receiver, and sometimes it's just the invisible structural mortar holding our complex verbs together so the sentence doesn't collapse. And we learned that 4 is our existential spotlight. It is about illuminating hidden purpose, it is the warm blanket of benefit in human care, and it is the physical container that helps us measure the invisible duration of time.
The final synthesis we can draw from all of this deep exploration is that language is not merely a sterile mathematical system of communication. It is a map.
Oh, no.
It is a highly detailed, deeply encoded map of how we interact with our physical environment and, crucially, how we relate to each other on a profound emotional level. By mastering the psychology behind these 2 tiny prepositions, you aren't just improving your grammar score, you are refining your ability to express your spatial awareness and your deep human empathy.
You are finally learning to walk the vibrant streets of that new city we talked about at the beginning. You are looking up, feeling the rhythm of the neighborhoods, experiencing the life around you, instead of just staring down at a spreadsheet of latitude and longitude coordinates.
You're actually living the language.
You are learning to trust your feelings and letting the English flow. But as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought. A question to mull over as you go about the rest of your day, driving to work or making dinner.
I'll lay it on them.
We've established that our subconscious choice between these 2 tiny words reveals whether we are focused on the physical mechanics of an action or the deep emotional purpose behind it. So look at how you describe your own life to yourself in your own head. Think about the big, heavy things you do every single day. Are you just going to your job, treating it as nothing more than a daily geographical destination, an endless arrow you have to ride? Or are you actually working for a purpose? Mastering the subtle psychological difference between these two tiny words might not just fix your English grammar, it might completely change the way you see the meaning behind your own daily actions.